Thank you very much. Welcome back, Breckland Planning, for this afternoon. Can we just note that unfortunately Councillor Gilbert has had to leave. So we're now going on to item 9B at Thompson, 3PL 2022-0634 in outline format. I've got Councillor Angus Welsh, Thompson Parish Council. Thank you, sir. Mr. Andrew Cook, Thompson Residents Representative, obviously an objector, and Mr. Roger Gillies, who's the agent, and Councillor Sarah Suggett, who's the ward rep. Okay, thank you. I'll hand you over to Matthew, please.
Okay, this is a outline planning application. So the reference is 3PL 2022-0634/0. It's in the village of Thompson, and it's Tomshaven, Tottenham Road. So this is an outline planning application, and all matters are reserved. And it's for the erection of two-bedroom houses. The reasons for this being brought before planning committee is due to Breckland has an interest in the land itself. Okay, so here is the site plan. So here is the red line. So here is the site here, and it's surrounded by residential dwellings all along here. So this is Tottenham Road here, and that's also Tottenham Road here as well. So this is a cul-de-sac. There are two existing trees on site. So this is in its wider context. So you've got Tottenham Road. So here's the site here. And then, as you can see, you got Mill Road, and then you got Mile Pit Road here as well. So this sort of makes up Thompson. So I brought a slide up regarding the Thompson settlement boundary. So the site itself, so Thompson in the settlement hierarchy under policy Gen 03 is classified as a village with boundaries. And this is the site here. So the site does sit within the settlement boundary for Thompson itself. So there were concerns raised from Thompson Parish Council regarding the site being contrary to policy Hal 4. However, as the site is situated within the settlement, inside the settlement boundary for Thompson, it therefore means that the principal development is acceptable under policy Gen 03 and Gen 05, and it is considered that policy Hal 4 is not considered applicable to the assessment of this application. And the reasons for that is due to policy Hal 4 assesses on development that is situated outside of the settlement boundary. And in this particular instance, it'll be village with boundaries, which Thompson is classified as one. This is also from the adopted local plan policies map. So I wanted to also bring this up just to run through some site history and to also run through some other concerns that have been raised by residents of Thompson and also Thompson Parish Council. So as you can see, the red line represents the settlement boundary for Thompson itself. I've got a key here. So the amber represents sites with planning permission for housing. So these were at the time of the adoption of the local plan, sites that had planning permission for housing. And I've also got one here in green regarding open space. So the site is here, and the site has got an amber colour to it. So there was previous planning permission approved for the erection of one dwelling on the site from 2012. And then, as you can see here, this is area that is designated as formal open space. So there were concerns raised by residents nearby the development and also from Thompson Parish Council regarding the status of the land itself. So the land is used by residents currently. However, it should be noted that that is an informal open space within planning terms. So in terms of the adopted local plan, it's not considered a formal open space. And because it's not classified as a formal open space under the policies map that was adopted, it therefore means that no weight can be applied to policy ENV 04, which relates to the protection of open spaces. So as I have mentioned before, the application is for outline planning permission. So it's establishing the principle of development and all matters are reserved. So therefore it means we're just focusing on the principle of development. And please do note that this is just an indicative proposed site plan. So things such as access, scale, landscaping, appearance, and layout are all reserved, and these will be dealt under a reserved matters application if the outline planning application were to be approved. So the application is seeking for the erection of 2 dwellings on the indicative site plan, and as you'll see on the next slide with the floor plans, it is proposed for it to be 2-storey in terms of scale. However, please note that that is a reserved, that is not under consideration for this application, and we are just establishing the principle of development. So the site itself, there will be the removal of 2 trees. I can confirm that the tree and countryside officer was consulted as part of the planning application, and they did raise no objection to the removal of the trees, subject to compensating with new trees. And as you can see, there will be a landscape buffer here, and there is plans for new trees to be planted on the site to compensate and to replace the 2 trees that are currently situated around here. And these are the indicative floor plans, but again, please do note that these are indicative, and things such as scale, layout, and appearance will all be decided under a reserved matters application. So it would be proposed for it to be 2-storey at this current moment based on the floor plans. And I can confirm that these proposed floor spaces do meet the requirements of policy HAL 10, which is for national space standards to be complied with. And I can confirm if there were to be the erection of 2 2-bedroom, 2-storey dwellings on the site, these would meet the minimum space standards. Just a couple of pictures as well. So as you can see, this is one of the trees that is proposed to be removed, and you can see dwellings towards the south, and this is Tottenham Road here. This is looking more into the cul-de-sac from the eastern side. So as you can see, this is the other tree here. So this is where the dwellings would be currently proposed on the indicative site plan, and then it would be that the rear gardens are proposed around here. This is sort of the access to the cul-de-sac that is Tottenham Close. And as you can see, there are residential dwellings that are situated behind. This is looking north. So you've got you've got 2 bungalows, a pair of semi-detached bungalows here, and then you've got 2-storey, and there's then continuing along Tottenham Road. And then this is just another shot of the site itself. And then just another one, as you can see, these are the rear amenity spaces for these dwellings here. And then one just looking from the western side out to the front, so here. So just to confirm that the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. I can confirm that statutory consultees have raised no objection. This includes ecology, arboricultural, and just the only thing that will need to be noted is that the highways have raised no objection. However, this is just subject to clarification on the red line site plan regarding highways boundaries. And this is a matter that is sought to be delegated to officers. And just to provide a final update, there was a supplementary report for this application. And just to confirm the matter regarding GI rounds to the draft unilateral undertaking and the £75 administration fee has since been received. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Suggett, would you like to go first or last? Of course you can. Okay, so I've got Councillor Angus Welsh of Thompson Parish Council. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon, councillors. Outline planning applications are used to gain understanding, note acceptability and validity. Thompson is designated unsustainable. Objection is based on the fact that the application does not meet any of the 4 criteria of HOU 4 of the local plan. And despite the statement at paragraph 1.2 of the case officer's committee report and his statements today, the HOU 4 methodology at appendix 5 of the plan's second sentence states that proposals include inside and outside settlement boundaries. Therefore, HOU 4 definitely applies. So the plan allows a 5% increase in properties in Thompson to 2036, that is 7. If this is, and others in the pipeline are approved, this would bring that total to 13, almost double the amount stated in the plan, with 14 years of that plan still to run. This is an increase significantly more than 5%. The development is not appropriate for the site. The indicative plans do not match the pair of bungalows on the other side of the access road into the area houses close, nor the detached single dwelling to the south of the plot. The design increases the density of residential properties in this area of the village markedly, impacting heavily on close neighbours. Guidance in the plan states that development avoids coalescence. This proposal is definitely coalescence, and by putting 2 houses in this location will effectively turn a peaceful cul-de-sac into a noisy urban-style estate. Highways proposes widening Tottington Road outside the proposed properties. If the road is not wide enough there already for cars to safely leave the parking areas, surely it is a problem for the whole length of Tottington Road. Tottington Road is used for access to the primary school at drop-off and collection times. It is not always a lightly used road. There are already issues with parking in the cul-de-sac. It is single track with very little room for turning, loading, parking, and the addition of extra houses results in additional pressure. The application categorizes the land as vacant, but its actual usage is amenity, and it has been an amenity ever since the area houses were constructed. It is a safe place in which young children can play whilst in sight of parents, and gives the children an opportunity for social and physical activities. History. In 2012, Breckland Council gave permission for a bungalow on this site, yet now this proposal is attempting to put in exactly the same plot to 2-story semi-detached houses. The plot has not changed, but the ambition has. All the arguments in objection of this historical application remain valid. In summary, the proposal would be contrary to the character and appearance of the area and would amount to a cramped form of development, and it would have a detrimental impact on the form and character of the locality, which significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the proposal. Thompson Parish Council is unanimous and objects most strongly to this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Mr. Andrew Cook, please. Thompson residents representative as an objector. Sorry? Oh, there's a presentation to come up as well. A couple of slides, I believe.
Yeah, that's right, Rob, when you're ready to come into.
Is that good? Yes, yes. Afternoon, Mr. Chairman and councillors. So I'm here to speak on behalf of the existing residents. None of the existing residents to a person want this development. And I've gone round and talked with everyone, and everyone signed a petition, everyone I can get hold of, that is. Okay, slide 2, please. Yeah, okay. The Breckland Bridge website says developments are for the benefit of the community across Breckland, and we would like to point out that we are also members of the community across Breckland. One basis of the original application was overlooking is not an issue, as the front elevations overlook a sewage pumping station, which is not residential. And this is a photograph looking towards that station. I'd like you to see the industrial unit there. But we just do not overlook an industrial unit. Slide 3, please. Yeah, Michael Gove recently said new housing development should be more beautiful and have consent of the local community. And this certainly isn't beautiful, and it does not have our consent. Yeah, slide 4, please. All right, this is a village. The ambient noise level in the village is 25 decibels. It's very, very quiet. Now, most of the legislation on sound is based on urban developments, and we are not an urban development, we're rural. Now, if you put 2 air source heat pumps there, they also produce an additional 25 decibels measured at 30 meters. And I've gone on the Institute of Acoustics website, and there's, you know, you can get a spreadsheet to calculate all of this stuff. It's equivalent to parking a car outside your bedroom window and running it 24/7 during winter. That would be the effect of this. And I'd say at the very minimum, if this is going to be built, any air source heat pumps want to point away from the current buildings towards the road, but we don't want them there at all. Now, the Institute of Acoustics professional guidance states that MCS noise assessment is no guarantee of avoiding significant adverse noise impacts, and summarized by saying, do not locate ASHPs in quieter locations, and we are a quieter location. Yes, next slide, please. Yes. So green space in the middle of a set of houses is internationally recognized as being something that provides a good environment to work in and to live in. And there's a development just down the road from us, which has got exactly that. This is a new planning that you must have approved quite recently. And so, you know, the residents have got the advantage of that space in the middle. This is why it's been built like that. And, you know, the next slide, please. And so this is what we have. We have a green space in the middle of the houses. And it's all very well saying, oh, we've got Thompson Green across the road, but this is a place where kids can play where they're in view of the houses. And it provides, it's not an enclosed space. Modern housing, the fashion for modern housing is to put them all together into tight little lots. So they're all looking into each other's windows, and where sound ricochets backwards and forwards. We didn't subscribe to that kind of housing. This is, you know, this is why we're living here. Run out of time. Yes, we don't want anything to degrade. We feel that this planning actually degrades the quality of living that we have there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No more slides? No, okay, that was the last one. Thank you. Thanks very much. We've now got Mr. Roger Gillies, who's the agent, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Roger Gillis, Director of Barefoot and Gillis Architects. We were appointed to act for a company called the Land Group to develop a series of sites which are owned by Breckland District Council. I'm sorry. Yeah, we were appointed to act for a company called the Land Group in the development of a series of sites owned by Breckland District Council. The council has entered a joint venture with the Land Group to form a development company called Breckland Bridge, and the purpose of this company is to review parcels of land owned by Breckland District Council and to obtain planning permission for them so that they can be sold on the open market. The revenue will be used by the council to fund various council initiatives. A review carried out by the council in February 2021 identified the Tottington Road Thompson site as being capable of development. We carried out an initial design assessment of the Tottington Road site, and once this was accepted by both the council and our clients, we applied for outline planning permission. The committee report highlights the fact that this application is an outline planning application with all matters reserved. That point has been made on a number of occasions during this presentation, and that would include the suitability or otherwise of air source heat pumps. As a practice, we do a lot of social housing. We use air source heat pumps quite regularly. It does keep the cost down for the residents. If it's not appropriate in any particular place, then we wouldn't have it. So what we're talking about here is two-story houses on a site. The site plan shows that there's sufficient space between the new housing and the existing houses to avoid overlooking, and also space for both attractive gardens and for a generous planted verge to the east side of the houses and a footpath to the west. The development will require 2 trees to be removed, but the indicative site plan shows that there's an opportunity there for 7 trees to replace them. Highways has raised no objection to the scheme, and neither has the tree officer or the ecology. I'm aware of the objections of the parish council, but in order to address these objections, I would say that the two-storey form building reflects the scale of the neighbouring two-storey houses. And again, this is an outline application with all matters reserved, including the elevational treatment and the floor plans. I think that this application is in accordance with all the relevant policies. There haven't been any objection from highways or any ecological objections. Just to cover the point about the red line covering the footpath. We've included it because we need to we need to include a footpath in our proposals in order to gain adequate access to the houses.
Thank you. Were you not here first thing?
I wasn't first thing.
Oh, I did say that you could just carry on, but I wouldn't let you go too long.
Well,
I didn't mean you to
I've done
stop.
presentations before where I've sort of been stopped dead. So
Yeah, I didn't mean you to slam your brakes on like you did, because we all got thrust forward when you've done that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I've got councillor Suggett, please. You'll need the microphone, yes. Oh, turn that one off. Yeah, away you go.
Thank you very much. Whilst I appreciate that developers are looking to make the most, perhaps financially, of a piece of land they acquire, I believe that regardless of who they are, it is our duty to be pushing for better standards. This piece of land, albeit informally, is valued by the local community and is used as a safe place for young children to play and enjoy. The greenery sets off the area nicely. And as was mentioned earlier, our green agenda, maybe this piece of land would have been better used to enhance the amount of trees perhaps that we are planting in the district, or to make better use of the two what are currently there. The application that has been mentioned that was given permission in 2012 for a bungalow did have some agreement, and it is felt that the site was more suitable for such. However, this application is asking for 2 dwellings, making it significantly different. I do think we should be doing better for our communities, especially with regards to design and space. And as members, we do have the ability to make a mark in the sand. I appreciate this is an outline application and design will come later, but if we are to approve the concept of 2 dwellings on this site, I do believe it will make it much harder to push for a better future application to come in. So I do feel that this should be refused on grounds of overdevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's open to questions from members. Councillor Khyber, then Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed on one of the early photographs there was a manhole within the site, and as there's a pumping station opposite, has a search been done of the Anglian Water infrastructure?
No, it hasn't. Anglian Water weren't consulted as part of the application.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have an answer to it. I'll have 2. I'll have the agent, then I'll have the gentleman at the far end from the parish council. Would like to answer, sir? Must have a microphone on there.
Yes, we looked at the Anglian Water Assets map, and there is a sewer there, but it doesn't interfere with the foundations of the houses. We put footpath and car parking over it, so it doesn't affect that asset.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, Councillor Khyber, there is an access to the sewer there. The sewer is only for the airy houses, the white ones you saw behind, which then leads to the Thompson substation sewage plant. So it does run across that green area you're talking about. Whether it's been taken into consideration, as has been said, obviously I don't know, but there we go.
Okay, Rebecca, please.
Sorry, councillors. I appreciate that it's there, but it would be a matter for building control to deal with that, covering any bridging of a manhole cover and the covering of any pipelines. That's dealt with through your building control process.
Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. Yes, I believe this site was part of the overall original design of the Airy Houses Council Estate in Thompson. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I find it regretful and ironic that historic amenity areas such as this are at risk of being lost to the detriment of planning design, whilst at the same time Breckland Council is consulting on its new design code. So for that fact alone, I find it very disappointing if this area was lost and was, you know, as I say, to the detriment of what was in the original design. Thank you.
Councillor Attawell.
Yeah, I fully agree with what Councillor Bowes has just said, and I would say to Cabinet at Breckland, sometimes it's not the finance of these things that's most important. Actually, it's what it means to local people, and we're here to represent local people. And I can't believe that we're sitting here looking at an application such as this to build these houses, one effectively is a postage stamp piece of land in the whole of Breckland. And I think that's really regrettable that we've come to that. And I think this whole system needs a review. But I'm looking at the Cabinet member over there just to say, that's my opinion. I think this is overdevelopment of the site and I certainly can't support it. And we need to be mindful. Yes, Breckland Council needs to look to its finances, but we also need to be very mindful about what's important for the communities we represent. And I get it in my community as well. Lots of these very small parcels of land are incredibly important to local people as amenity space, and we mustn't lose them because once they're gone, they're gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? No. Councillor Plummer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just point to 6.2 to Rebecca? It's a category B, category C trees, and we're quite happy to get rid of them. And the last plan we were talking about, you were quite against cutting down a category B tree. In fact, you were going to refuse the plan, and because of that. So we can't have two standards here. We can't refuse. Thank you.
So I have reviewed this. I think the difference is that, yes, they are both category B trees, but the tree officer has an arboricultural assessment. He's visited the site. He's made an assessment of the quality of those trees and the lifetime of those trees, and is of the opinion, and we take his statutory advice because that's what we pay him to do, that the 7 replacement trees, the longevity and the health of those trees would outweigh the loss of that one tree. But it's the quality of that, it's the quality of the tree that you're moving. But I 100%, Councillor Plummer, take your point about that. So I agree with you, it can never be a blanket B1, and that's why on the last application we need more information in the terms of an arboricultural assessment for him to make that assessment whether the quality of that B ash tree is significant to worthy retention. So, you know, he hasn't said no in one instance and yes in the other. He hasn't seen the information on the last item. On this item, he's satisfied that the longevity of that tree is not as such.
Well, I was going to say, Councillor Plummer, in those infamous words, you're a braver man than me, Gunga Din, but Councillor Attawell wants to jump in as well.
Well, I think Councillor Plummer makes an excellent point. And at the last item we were looking at, we were talking about an ash tree with dieback, and we've got to protect that within an inch of its life. And then here we've got 2 perfectly healthy trees on a site, and we're quite happy to cut them down. And I've just wondered what officers are doing here. To be honest, there don't seem to be any sort of consistency when it comes to the trees.
Stop picking on my young lady here. Go on.
We're debating this item, but you know what I said to you in the last meeting was that we don't have the information to make that assessment about the tree, and the recommendation for refusal was an insufficient information. What I was saying to you is the information we've got in front of us is it's a category B tree, and what I would like to make the point to members is because a tree has ash dieback, that is not a reason anymore to remove a tree. When it first came out, ash dieback, we wholeheartedly went, oh, it's got ash dieback, it can go. Now, current guidelines with regards to ash dieback is that Like any disease, there is a healing system, and if we leave the trees long enough, they will form into an evolution process. I'm not a tree officer, so please don't make me go into the science of this, because I was never any good at science. But my understanding in really basic Becky terms is that, you know, ash dieback isn't in itself a reason to remove a tree, and there is natural regrowth and natural healing, but you have to leave the trees in place for them to develop immune systems to be able to do that. That's its simplest form. I'm sure there's a far more technical, scientific explanation of it.
Any further questions from members? Not having a go at my young lady here. Councillor Digan.
No, it's just a sort of something one of the gentlemen brought up about air source pumps not being particularly nice in a rural area. I thought there was something we were meant to be promoting all over the place these days. And is there any sort of policy on these heat pumps? Because surely they're going to come, so we're told, in about 10 years' time, we're going to have these whether we like them or not. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so there's two matters that you should really consider. Well, there's three actually. One, there's no indication in this application that they're going to have air source heat pumps, so it's not in the description of the development, but I appreciate there's been discussed at length and that could be an option for them. So I don't consider at this point you should be considering the air source heat pumps. Having said that, if you think the principle of development is acceptable, they are permitted development. So not only these dwellings, but any one of their neighbouring properties could install air source heat pumps under regulations under the permitted development without the need for planning permission. And the third thing is, yes, absolutely, you have a renewable energy policy that these would fit within, and they are a means of delivering a higher level building regulations, but there are obviously other means, and they won't be appropriate in all areas, and there are separation distances in the PD, etc. So there are restraints on that, but with regard to the application that you're considering in front of you, although they've been talked about, there is no indication in this application that they would be approved as part of it. That would be for your reserve matters application.
Thank you. Okay. No. Sorry. Oh yes, come back in, please.
Sorry, I thought you were going to let me in before. So I just wanted to comment, members, and remind you about your material planning considerations. So the profit from this site, whoever it goes to, is not a material planning consideration in the determination of this application. The public views are material to the extent that the matters they raise are material considerations to the application. I've heard at length about the use of the green space. It's not a designated open space and not secured as such as a designated open space, so we can't secure it in perpetuity to be used for footfall, and there would be no means of stopping that from being fenced. But also I have heard that green spaces contribute to the character of the area, which is an obvious material consideration in the determination of applications. I've also heard about overdevelopment of the plot and having two dwellings in that, which are a material planning consideration. But just to remind you, members, which I know you already know, that the financial gain from this site is not a material planning consideration in the determination of the application, although it has been discussed at length.
Thank you. I can assure you I'm not getting the profit. Okay. We're going to take the vote on this one, which is item 9B, 3PL 2022-0634 in outline format at Thompson. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? Oh, 2. And those against? 1, 2. Okay. From the floor, could I have your reasons to disagree with the officers and your way forward from that? Councillor Attwell.
I believe that's overdevelopment of the site and the green open space. Do we put this important to its importance to the local community? I'm looking to the officer to help me with the wording, but you know where I'm going.
If you'll let me help, it's important to the character of the area and the street scene and the visual aspects and the landscaping that I can do. What I can't do is in terms of use, because it's not a designated open space, in my opinion.
Do I have a seconder for Councillor Attwell? Councillor Bowes. Thank you. So can I have a show of hands that we refuse this item from the floor? 8, and those against? 2. Okay, this item is refused. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 9D and 9E. We're taking these together, although there will be 2 votes, and that's at Attleborough. We have Jason Parker, who's the agent. Mr. Stuart Grant, who's an objector, was meant to be coming, but he's had to cancel out. And that's item 3PL 2022-0812, which is a variation, and 3PL 2022-0852, which is a full application. We'll just get this programmed on, and then we've got Thetford after that. Thank you. Water is £1 a glass, Mr. Parker. Yeah, we're trying to get some money out of you.
Good afternoon, members and committee. Apologies for that slight delay. So we're moving now on to items 9A and 9B in Attleborough, excuse me. So we've got 2 applications here. So we've got a site which some of the members may recall. It was at committee back in 2015, so it's a long time ago. So I'm going to go through the site in more detail later, but it's actually a site that has consent. It was granted for the erection of 91 dwellings, associated open space and access and off-site highways improvement works. So what we're now looking at is 2 applications relating to that same site. One seeks to amend the approved layout, house types, landscaping, etc. We've also got a full application for the erection of 8 dwellings. So we'll discuss those 2 in more detail, but there'll be, as I go through it, we'll discuss them as one, but we'll need to make 2 decisions on them in due course. But before I go into the detail of the applications, just an update to the recommendation on item 9A. You'll see in the recommendation it is recommended for approval subject to conditions. It's just to add in there subject to entering into a deed of variation to update the planning obligations, so that existing consent is subject to a section 106, and that's in relation to the affordable housing provisions in particular. So going on to the site, I'll just give you a wider context. So it's actually this red area here. So we're on the northwest edge of the town. So we've got the A11 that wraps around to the northwest, residential area, as we can see here, the opposite side. So we've got an odd-shaped site essentially. So what we have is parts, what was referred to as parts 3, 4 and 5 of a Norfolk Homes site and consent, which was built out to the east. So these are these remaining parcels. So the red edge for the variation is here in terms of this part, but it also continues down to the south. And in terms of the full application, this is the red line here, accessed off Snapdragon Close here. So we can see the relationship to the A11, open countryside beyond to the northwest, residential area here to the south and east. And we've got a cluster of dwellings there off Carver's Lane to the south. So in terms of how it sits in context, in terms of the local plan, we can see here, based on the consent, the settlement boundary runs around the site here in red, and then we can see the site there. We can see open space in green here. In proximity, again, the A11 here, the London Road further west, you see the floodplain of the River Thet to the northwest, and open countryside again beyond. So there's just a bit of a view of the site in terms of the immediate views We've got the residential units here, I mean, surrounding generally 2 stories in height, modern design, mixture of materials, generally brick and pan tile and slate to the roofs. So just touching on some of the history there. So this is the part of the approved scheme that has consent. And you'll see from the report, this scheme has the applicants, Places for People, are a registered provider of affordable homes. They have committed to the site and have begun to build out part of the permission. So units, plots 79 to 91 in this northern corner have commenced on site. I'll show you photographs in a moment. Then we've got the remainder of this northern portion here. So that's the existing approval. And again, this is the lower half of the site as one. So we can get an idea of the consent here already granted. So access from Carver's Lane here running through a new estate road and then through to Bryony Way at the northeast corner here. So as mentioned, that granted consent for 91 dwellings. 30% of those would be affordable. So just touching on the 2 applications before us, essentially the proposals now we're looking at would combine to provide 98 dwellings on the site. So that's an increase of 7. But before we go into detail on the proposals, I'll just run through the site photographs and context again. So we're looking at Carver's Lane here, so we can see the site here of those first northern plots has been begun. See the construction works there. So this is south along Carver's Lane. We get an idea of the character there. Now, as part of the proposals granted, but also proposed within this scheme is to create Carver's Lane along, I'll go through in more detail shortly, but as a restricted route for cyclists and pedestrians. So that would be retained. So we're looking along Carver's Lane. So one of the access points across it would come across here into the site, which sits here. And then there's that site where the works have already commenced under the existing permission. Again, view north. So the actual application sites here beyond the trees and hedgerows. We've got the A11 that sits beyond the mature trees and the bund here. So that's the other side of there. And again, that's a view of the site and the earth bund and trees. And then this is looking at the southern portion of the site. So again, beyond in the distance is the A11 and earth bund, the site in the foreground. And again, to give you an idea of the site frontage onto Carver's Lane. And then this is this view back to Westcar Road. So the site sits beyond the trees here, Westcar Road beyond. Again, it's a flat open site. Again, that's Westcar Road southern boundary. Then there's a pedestrian route across the A11 as we go along here in that area there. Single story, 1.5 story units and dwellings on the southern side of Westcar Road. And that's a view of the site. So Westcar Road behind us, Carver's Lane here. We've got the Laurels, a 2-story care home site just due east of the site on the right hand side here. So in terms of going back to the approved master plan, just going to run through the proposals. So in terms of going back to the northern portion of the site, so approved scheme here. So as mentioned, these units in the northern end are being constructed on site at the moment under the extant permission. So in terms of changes, there's 2 units there, change in house type. We've got dwellings roughly in this location permitted, but again proposed here. A notable change here relates to this portion where 2 larger houses were consented and now there's proposed 5 units. In terms of this is the site for the 8 units, so 8 units, 2-story semi-detached properties. So this is one portion of the site where concerns were raised to the applicants and a unit was removed. To now proposes 8 units, and you're probably seeing correspondence and plans reference to 9 units, so that's why we've got a now scheme of 8 units. It's been reduced in number. And just looking at through the southern phase, so again picking up the approved scheme, so you'll see that the road layout and access points are the same. So the one of the issues previously was the extent of works off-site in terms of changes to Carver's Lane, the various access points. That remains as extent and granted. So the estate road here, you can see the open space here. So that again, we can see is in the same location, slightly increased in size as a result of the scheme before us. So yeah, in terms of the estate road, you can see the general alignment here is the same. So in essence, we've got amended house types and slightly tweaked plot sizes and locations. So the general arrangement's much the same. We've got a frontage development. We've got, as you come in here, the arrangement's much the same. That continues along here. We do have, obviously, in this phase, this is where 4 of the additional units are proposed over the extant permission. But yeah, you'll see generally the scheme is broadly in accordance with the extant permission. So now we have a registered provider of affordable homes, places for people. As the applicant, they're proposing 100% affordable housing scheme. So that, in terms of the mix, proposes 55% shared ownership, so 54 units, and 45% affordable rented, so the traditional social housing kind of tenure. So that equates to 45% of the housing on site. In terms of the breakdown, there's a mix of 1 to 4 beds. There's now a predominance of 2 beds. So the predominant is 44 units, 46 in total, with the majority being those 2 and 3 beds. In terms of the proposals, there's 9 4-bed units. So in terms of changes to consider, there's essentially 10 more 2-bed units and 10 less 4-bed units. So there's a change there in smaller units. And in terms of, we'll touch on the kind of considerations of that in due course, but in terms of the actual proposals and house types, we'll just quickly run through those. So all 2 stories, see conventional approach to design. So this is a 1-bed unit. Again, 2-bed units, take a similar design. There's different kind of treatments in terms of brick and render and weatherboarding. I'll show in a moment here. We've got the same house type with a variation in material to create some interest in the street scene. So some 3-bed units take the same approach with in terms of general design, but materials also used in that mixed arrangement. Yeah, we've also got some 2.5-story units here, so 3-bed units. So again, so you get an idea of the design and materials and arrangement. 4-bed units here, so some gable fronted units here. In terms of some of the issues, you obviously see from the report, there's a number of objections, and this was a controversial scheme when it was considered back in 2015, consent granted in 2016. In terms of the parish town council, there's no objections raised from the town council. But you'll see in terms of obviously before you, it was considered at committee previously and is before you again in light of the objections. In terms of a number of the issues raised, I'll go through them in more detail, but as mentioned, we've got a position here in terms of the principle where permission's been granted for 91 units. So you'll see from the report, we're kind of focusing on those impacts from the changes, and in terms of the changes there, we're looking at the kind of change to affordable housing provision, the mixture and tenure. So we've got the applicants have been in discussion with our housing team pre-application through the application process, and the housing team have raised no objections in terms of the type and tenure. And as mentioned, there's an emphasis more on the 2 and 3-bed units compared to the Norfolk Homes scheme that has stamp permission, and that in officers' views addresses the kind of results of the strategic housing market assessment, which kind of emphasise the need for 2 and 3-bed units. We touched on the kind of layout. It's broadly in accordance with the extant permission. There's obviously an impact from the additional 7 units in terms of the density, but in terms of the proposals there before you, in terms of character, broad character and form, it's considered to be respectful of that area immediately southeast in terms of the modern development at the Norfolk Home site. So in general character and landscape and townscape, the proposals are considered to be acceptable. You'll note in terms of the public open space provision, now there is a conflict with policy in VO4 in terms of the amount of open space, but when we consider the extent consent and the proposals before us do increase the amount of open space on top of that, in light of other material considerations, the benefits, in terms of affordable housing provision, it's considered that conflict would not outweigh the other considerations. In terms of, touched on kind of the general arrangement of height and materials, and the applicants have responded to issues raised by officers in the application, have reduced the numbers of units slightly. So rather than 100, reduction from to 98 units, and additional materials and variations been added to the scheme to respond to those comments. In terms of kind of key issues from the community, a lot of those do relate to the kind of highways aspects, impacts of those changes, and we'll see kind of a touch on those. We've obviously got access off Carver's Lane here onto Westcar Road. Some of the comments do relate to impacts of off-site highways work, so those would introduce pavements along Westcar Road. However, those are as already consented. In terms of the route, as mentioned, the access routes are the same. So concerns were raised about connections through to Bryony Way, northeast of the site. In terms of the use of Snapdragon Close here to a private drive. So in terms of this access, there wouldn't be any increase in number of units over and above the extant permission. So still 10 units accessed off there. And also the adjoining of Honeysuckle Way here at the northeast corner. So it's recognised that those changes will obviously during construction impact on neighbours. But in terms of the highways merits, the Highways Authority have raised no objections again. And as mentioned, they do remain the same as already granted. So in highways perspectives, there's no concerns there from an impact on the highways function and safety. In terms of other aspects, one of the comments raised relates to bin services and impacts, for example, on Snapdragon Close now. This is actually improved, so it will be an adopted road. So that in terms of specification, it will enable services to run down there. In terms of other kind of concerns locally, in terms of amenity, so not only those actual works going on site, the impacts of those off-site highways works, but additional noise, traffic, etc. Now, in terms of the proposals before us, they are looking at 7 additional units. No, so in officers' views, those 7 additional units, when you look at the actual amount of impacts above the extent permission, those aren't considered to be significant and in the realms of acceptability. Concerns were also raised about additional impacts in terms of properties that front onto Carver's Lane. So there is obviously proposals here. In terms of the distances there, they are approximately 26 metres, which is an acceptable distance in terms of retaining adequate separation from those existing properties on Carver's Lane. So when we've obviously reviewed the amenity considerations, the separation distances on site, those are considered to be acceptable both for the future occupants and neighbouring residents. In terms of comments from the environmental health team, I just needed to update you on. You'll note from the report, the applicants have submitted a noise impact assessment. So we've actually received updated comments on that from the environmental health team, and they've raised no objections subject to conditions to include those recommendations in the updated assessment. So it's officers' recommendation that we amend conditions 19 on item 9A and 13 on 9B to reflect those comments. You'll also note, obviously went through the photos along Carver's Lane. That is the tree-lined aspect of it. The mature vegetation is an important aspect to the local community and the site from an aesthetic point of view. Now, officers have discussed the proposals with the applicants in detail in terms of landscaping. So we have had update landscaping plans, and you'll also see from the report that the tree officer has raised no objections to the proposal, subject to an appropriate landscaping scheme in terms of including the replanting of trees and hedgerows. In that respect, the impacts aren't considered to be unacceptable, subject to that condition. In terms of ecology and wildlife implications, conditions are recommended to provide the necessary mitigation in that regard, but also updated the local plans were adopted since the grant of the original permission, and it obviously now requires ecological enhancements in terms of providing net gain to biodiversity. So there's a condition to ensure that's achieved as well. In terms of other technical aspects, in terms of drainage, the proposals have actually on site obviously commenced, and there's a detailed drainage strategy already been approved for the site. But obviously there is a slight amendment to the proposal in terms of plot units and sizes and layouts. So conditions recommended to achieve an updated scheme in that regard. In terms of the planning obligations, I touched on the amended recommendation to item 9A. So in essence, we are looking at an amended scheme that will need to address those affordable housing obligations in the original application in 106. So we are looking at an amended legal agreement which addresses that. Now it's proposed to be 100% affordable. Obviously the mixture in tenure in terms of housing from social, affordable rented and shared ownership. So in other aspects of the legal obligations, the education and library contributions would remain, but also the provision of on-site open space, but also there's an off-site open space contribution which would remain. In terms of the full application for 8 dwellings, you see from the report that there's an requirement to address the additional infrastructure impacts from the additional 8 dwellings. So there's the recommendations also to include a legal agreement in the negotiations to secure additional contributions towards education and library facilities locally, but also to deliver the affordable housing within that scheme, and also the green infrastructure recreational avoidance mitigation strategy payment as well from the additional dwellings. Just in terms of summary and conclusions, obviously the proposals before us provide 7 additional units within a sustainable location within a market town that's allocated for significant growth in the local plan. Significant weight is the 100% affordable housing scheme in terms of the provision of social benefits, the greater number of smaller bed units to meet the need within the district in terms of housing provision. Both we've also got additional open space but on site, albeit there remains a deficit in terms of the local plan requirement. When we consider the fallback position of the stamp permission, the additional amount, those kind of conflicts aren't considered to outweigh the other material considerations. Following amendments to the scheme, the layout and design is now considered to be acceptable. You'll see the conditions are recommended to deal with aspects in terms of, as mentioned, drainage, ecology, contamination. So having regard to the policies in the local plan, the Attleborough neighbourhood plan proposals are considered to be acceptable and compliant with those plans and the development plan. As you see in the report, both applications are recommended for approval. Conditions are set out on pages 61 to 69 of the report pack, and as mentioned, subject to an amendment to condition 19 in terms of item 9A, and again subject to the amended recommendation for 9B that there's a legal agreement to secure those, a deed of variation to secure those amended obligations, but there's also mentioned the amendment to condition 13 in terms of the compliance with the approved noise impact assessment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Mr. Jason Parker, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jason Parker from Parker Planning Services. I've got places for people here with me as well, so if you've got any questions, they're here for you. Before I start, I'd like to thank Chris Hobson for all his hard work. He's been very proactive and really good in communication, so it's been excellent. Thank you. The applications before you today are two linked applications, and that's made things very simple for us. And the variation application seeks approval of material amendments to the original application that was granted permission in 2016. And that's due to the recent purchase of the site from Places for People. So those changes are site layout changes, landscaping, house types, and increasing the tenure to 100% affordable housing. And that provides an important contribution to local affordable housing provision. The full planning application element of this is just for some additional units. They will also be 100% affordable housing. It's important to highlight that the quality of the homes and the materials will not be compromised with this being an affordable housing application. The applicant wanted to deliver a scheme which local people would be happy to see, and this is after a period of inactivity following the previous consent on the site. Early conversations with the council were held to ensure that a scheme could be delivered and provide substantial benefits to the wider community. That engagement has included the housing enabling officer as well in terms of the house types. It is proposed that construction works will use local labour for the build process. This will include sourcing materials and any further support services where required during the construction period. It is anticipated the site will be completed within the next 2 years. The plan is to move gradually from northern end of the site at West Car Road to the southern end over the course of a construction period. Throughout the application process, it's been supported by extensive technical documentation, which in all aspects have demonstrated that viable and acceptable development can occur on the sites. Early investigations and updates have been provided in relation to drainage, ecology, trees, highways, and will continue to as the proposal develops. As with the planning officers, the applicant has worked proactively with external consultees to ensure this is a good scheme. The site has been included within the settlement boundary for Attleborough and is enclosed from the open countryside by existing residential developments to the east and south and the A11 to the west. This, together with the original consent, provides a compelling planning case for the development. In relation to open space, this application provides more open space than the original consent. And this was a deliberate aim in order to provide a site which has environmental and social benefits. In the final analysis, the scheme delivers a vast array of social, economic and environmental benefits and 100% affordable housing. And we'd like you to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's open to questions from members at all. No. Councillor Dale.
I maybe missed it, but knowing that area well and the parking, the street parking, it concerns me that refuse lorries, ambulance, fire engine, are they going to get down there? Because that is one of the concerns that residents are bringing up. And I wholly understand it because there is street parking nose to tail in that area.
Yeah. Do you want me to just respond, please? Yeah. Yeah. In terms of that's one of the highways concerns, raised a number of times by the community. It's a common one. The layout there in terms of the Norfolk Homes scheme that's already been built out. Yeah, there's elements of that that are very tight. Now there is on-site parking, on street parking. Sorry. However, when obviously officers have reviewed it, when the Highways Authority reviewed it, the proposals before us are the same as those that were reviewed in detail before and are still considered to be acceptable by the Highways Authority. Now, what we've also got is a scheme that requires compliant curtilage parking for each unit. So when officers, we would have, obviously there may be concerns if they didn't, because obviously that would then introduce a requirement to park on street and increase that problem off-site and on-site. But when having regard to the scheme that's before us, the Highways Authority have reviewed it in detail and considered to be acceptable from a highways point of view in terms of function and safety. In terms of the proposals, bin services, I touched on the issue at Snapdragon, which was raised, and actually this would potentially improve that in terms of adopting. The Highways Authority would then adopt that route and actually enable refuse vehicles to access those units at the end of the cul-de-sac. Now, in terms of the Carver's Lane, that will also be adopted. Sorry, it's already adopted, but that will enable refuse vehicles to continue to access Carver's Lane as well. So in terms of in terms of those impacts, they have been considered on, and it is recognised by officers at the Planning Authority and the Highways Authority that there is concerns. However, from a highway safety point of view and function, it is considered to be acceptable.
Thank you for that answer. Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. A few points have been covered there, but from the word go, the residents in Snapdragon Close or Road had concerns, but I could see on that site plan where you start from Westgar Road end, that road, I think a lot of people, if I was living there, would come from the top and come on to Westgar Road and straight out onto London Road, rather than doing a rat run through the existing houses. But yeah, because the Laurels is there and they have a lot of parking there. That's quite a large home.
There isn't a question there, is there? No. Okay. I'm just trying to think whether we could answer, but it's an observation. But thank you for your ward member. That's fine. We appreciate that. Any further questions off anybody? No. Okay, fine. Thank you. So this item, I'm going to have to take 2 votes, but I'll read them out and then do them again. 9D Attlebury's 3PL 2022-0812 on a variation, which is amendment to the approved plans. Could I have a show of hands, please, for that? That's unanimous. Thank you. And 9E Attleborough 3PL 2022-0852F, which is the application for 8 dwellings. Your officer's recommendation again is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? And that is approved as well. Thank you very much. I do apologise for the length of time for today, but as you probably witnessed, we had some difficult ones. And usually it's normally you that's the difficult one, but oh, sorry, I thought you had your staff members, but I meant to say how wonderful you normally are. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, members, we're moving on to items 9F and 9G at Thetford. 3PL 2022-1305 on a full application and 3PL 2022-1306 listed building consent. We'll just wait to change ours over. Councillor Attwell has to leave, which I knew about anyway. So Councillor Attwell will not be here for the Thetford item. And then all the Swanton Morley buildings we want to do, we can shove them in at the end.
Thank you, Chairman. So you've already introduced it, that it's a full planning permission and a listed building consent for the change of use of this dwelling to an 8-person HMO. It's at planning permission. It's at planning committee because Breckland Council have an interest in the building and the land. So here's the building. You notice its corner location in terms of 3 roads, so Raymond Street, Old Market Street and Nether Row, and that little red arrow there is where we are, 30 Raymond Street, this L-shaped building. And you'll note the courtyard area to the rear, which is hard standing, currently used as parking. So the building itself is a residential dwelling. And we've got some floor plans to show you the scale of it, but it was previously used as a residential dwelling and a bed and breakfast. So there were, on average, more vehicles parked in that courtyard area than for just a single dwelling unit. If you can place yourself, it's the L-shaped building at the bottom of the screen, just above the purple line, number 30. The reason it's in red is because of the listed building. So this map's quite complicated, but this is taken from your local plan, but it does show you, and I can tell you that this is a listed building within Thetford Conservation Area. It's on the edge of the town centre boundary. I did too much talking earlier, members, sorry. And it's on the edge of the primary shopping area. So here is the red line boundary that's been provided with the application site, just to show you round the dwelling and round to that courtyard to the rear. And this is the proposed site plan of the rear, just showing that the L shape then allows for there to be a small courtyard garden and then a car park area with a bin store appropriate for 8 bikes as requested by the Highways Authority. The canny of you will note that this area isn't big enough to park 8 cars in this location. This is discussed extensively in the officer report and has been discussed with the Highways Authority at length. What we have taken into account is this is a highly sustainable location in the centre of Thetford with multiple access to means of travel. And therefore, although we accept this area wouldn't be big enough to park 8 individual cars, given the sustainability of the location, we're accepting this area as being a parking area to serve those units, and it's suitable in size. So just to take you through what it's going to look like on the ground floor plan. So there will be a shared dining room, kitchen area, downstairs shower room, storeroom and sitting room for all the residents to share. And then obviously a single, it said bed sit here, but a single room with a ensuite. And then we're going up to the first floor, where there'll be another 7 bedrooms. And you can see from this plan, some of them have got en suites, some of them have just got sinks in their rooms, and some of them have got a shared bathroom in line with being what a HMO would be. So we've got some pictures of the building, which actually is a really attractive building, but the plans show the frontage, the rear elevation, the side elevation. I want to go on to the pictures because it shows you a really nice building. So this is Raymond Street in the front. This is the frontage building. This is the frontage of the building and the neighbouring properties. It's panning round to the side Flint elevation of the property. And that's a lovely view of that. And that's showing the access to that rear courtyard area, which is already fenced off. And the rear elevation. And here you can see the Flint cottages opposite to the rear of the dwelling, and panning round into that courtyard area, and then the more business operations just behind that courtyard. So just to update you members, the Town Council have no objections to the application. Your Highways Authority don't object subject to conditions. Your Historic Building Officer, has no objection to the application and has indeed had detailed pre-application discussions with the applicants and agreed the works involved. And there's been no representations received to the consultation process or the change of description, which is listed in your report. The site's within the settlement boundary and within the town centre boundary, as well as the principal shopping area. Although we're noted that we're in the principal shopping area, this building is already a dwelling in that location in its entirety, so we're not losing any shopping elements. And also, I would like to remind members what the NPPF says about including residential dwellings in town centre locations, because they provide activity at different hours and surveillance into the night. So we do have variance in our primary shopping areas, principal shopping areas, not primary shopping frontage. The Highways Authority are happy subject to sufficient cycle parking, which we have the amended plan, which I showed you earlier with the 8 spaces, and that's what they require. And this will be conditioned. It accepts that residents, not all residents will be able to park if they all owned a car, but due to the extremely sustainable location within the town centre boundary, that this level of car parking is acceptable to the Highways Authority. With regards to layout, design and heritage, there are very limited alterations which are proposed in terms of works the building to create in HMO. The external works are considered largely to be repairs, and they will ensure the long-term longevity of the building and to ensure it's watertight and stays as attractive it is in the long term. The internal works are to make the dwelling suitable as a HMO, as its function as a HMO. These are listed in the report in full, but your Historic Building Officer has been involved in all the discussions about those alterations and are satisfied that they don't impact the historic fabric of the building in a negative way. As the elevations remain unchanged, the proposals are unlikely to impact the character and appearance of the conservation area or the street scene, and the special interest of the listed building is considered to be preserved, and any works which are considered to either improve the longevity of the building or any less than substantial harm would be at the lower end of the less substantial harm scale, and these will be outweighed by the public benefit of retaining this building in longevity and providing housing in a sustainable location in officers' view, in my view. With regards to ecology, a unilateral undertaking will be required for GI RAMS payments. That's for your that's to address the environmental impact from recreational use of those statutory sites. So we will require a unilateral undertaking, and therefore we have recommended this one for approval, subject to the conditions listed at the end of both of those two reports, and a unilateral undertaking for the full planning permission for GI RAMS. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. It's open to questions from members. No questions at all. Oh, Councillor Kybird.
The application says that Breckland has an interest in the site, but it doesn't say what that interest is.
I just want to say, I'm not entirely sure whether the sale has gone through. I'm looking at the back. Yeah, so we do own the building, and then we're going to be running that as a HMO.
So the interest is a freehold interest, and it will be used to run a temporary accommodation for Breckland Council.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Okay, any other questions at all? No, thank you. So with this item, first of all, 9F, 3PL 2022-1305F, which is the change of use to the 8 persons HMO. Your officer's recommendation is approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? Unanimous. And item 9G for 3PL 2022-1306 LB, which is the listed building consent. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. That's right, they put their hands up and down. They weren't sure what they was doing. Okay, thank you very much. So we have item 10, which is applications determined by the Executive Director of Place. He's gone back to his old title. They are for your information. And item 11 is the appeals summary, also for your information. At which point I close this meeting. But before you all go, I'd like to have a quick word once we've stopped recording.